Hands here. What a beautiful prayer. What a beautiful prayer. The line that caught me was to spend and consume themselves for souls. To spend and consume themselves for their souls. And isn't that the heart of a disciple? I'm so grateful to be with you all today. I'm so grateful for your work for vocations. We all know we need holy priests, religious deacons, but we cannot have holy priests, religious, and deacons unless we first have young disciples, right? To preach vocations to a young person who does not know that God made them and loves them and wants to spend eternity with them will fall on deaf ears. I've spent my career focused on the needs of teenagers in the church. I'll tell you some stories. Most of them are about my misadventures and things people should never do. But it's my joy to do the work that I do now with YDisciple because I get to train and equip adults to minister to the young people in their world. I'm going to explain a bit of the why behind our what today. And buckle up, there's going to be a good number of numbers coming to you all. I'm a data person. I'm a big data nerd. My son, when he was 4 years old, so I work from home a couple days a week, so my kids are a little bit more aware of what my job is than the average person, because they're hearing me on Zoom calls all day and on the phone. And one day my son Cyril, yes, I have a son Cyril, and today is his feast day, one of many. He said to me when he was 4 years old, "Mom, who is Data?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Who is Data? I hear you on your computer calls. You're always saying you love data." And I was like, oh gosh, how do I explain statistics to a 4-year-old? I was like, honey, it's numbers and stuff. It's a work thing for Mom. And he looks at me, and I kid you not, he puts his hands on his hips and he goes, "Mom, you told us we are supposed to love people and not things." I'm like, Isn't it the worst when your kid mirrors you back to you? And it's like, I want to pair you with that, not me. You'll hear a number of Cyril stories. But the highlight of my life, the most important thing in my life, is my family. I've been working in ministry for over 20 years, but the most important thing is my ministry at home. My husband and I were net missionaries together a while ago, and we have 4 children. They are 11, 9, 7, and 5. We're in our odd year, and you'll hear some stories about them. But to start to give just a little bit of context to what we're going to talk about, and we're going to do an activity. Don't worry, I'm not one of those weird youth ministers where we're going to be playing a game. Weird youth ministers, just youth ministers. That's what we do. It's something simple, but what I want to do is take a look at one small sliver of the culture in order to cast a wider light, okay? So if you happen to have a smartphone with you, which is funny, speaking of youth culture, they would never call it that because it's just a phone to them. More than half of people have had smartphones since 2012, they know no different. What I want you to do is, if you have a smartphone, I want you to look up the Billboard Hot 100 from the year you graduated high school. Don't worry, I'm not gonna ask you to share the year, but look up the Billboard Hot 100 from the year you graduated high school. Glance through it and just come up with an estimate of how many of those songs you still recognize. Maybe you can't sing all the tune, or you don't remember the artist's name, but you're like, oh, I remember that song. Roughly how many? This is a fun one for me. Has anyone run into a song they don't recognize yet? So right now we're down 1,000. You got one you don't recognize. First one, okay.
I'm just trying to remember some. The number ones, right?
Yep. Roughly what percentage do you recognize?
100.
About 100%, yep. I love doing this with groups where it's not all Gen Zers, because Gen Zers are like, what are you talking about? What is the Billboard Hot 100? The reason I have you do this is because if you did this exact same exercise with a teenager today, 13 to 18-year-old, I've done this with a wide range of teenagers, wide range of life experience. The highest number they've come up with is they've recognized 25%. 25%. People who study the culture call it the death of monoculture. There was a day we knew all of those songs because they were inescapable. You'd hear them as people drove by, they'd be on in stores. They were the most popular songs. What has replaced that is computer algorithms and earbuds. Everyone is listening to their own curated style of music. Personally, I like that. I'm finding music that I like that I wouldn't have otherwise. I don't listen to a lot of music because I'm a mom. If I'm alone in my car, I would like to listen to silence, please. But what it shows us is that there isn't a youth culture. There isn't a youth culture. There are hundreds of youth cultures. So for me as an adult, a middle-aged adult, to say to a group of teenagers, well, when I was a kid, it is so fundamentally different, even to the point of we are consuming media in such a profoundly different way. And if there's an end to monoculture, then there can't just be one way of doing ministry. So how do we take the unchanging truth of the gospel to a constantly changing landscape? How do we take a singular savior to a generation of subcultures? That is the trick. And I like to think about it this way. It would be, so this land we live in that we call America, there was centuries ago that people in Europe didn't know that this place existed, right? They had an idea, but they didn't know that it existed. And when the explorers went out, they went out on ships whose only fuel was wind. Wind. And I'm guessing that the wind was not always blowing the direction that they wanted or needed to go. But it'd be a poor sailor who would sit down on the deck and say, the wind these days, right? No, what they had to do is they had to harness it to still get where they needed to go. Not to go whatever way the wind is blowing, but to go where they needed the ship to go. So how do we take this culture that we're living in, good, bad, ugly, and how do we get our young people to where they need to go? All right, guys, get ready for some numbers. Are you ready? I like numbers, as my son pointed out to me. I should like them, not love them. I like numbers because they help us understand reality. They help us understand what is going on around us so we can function in it. Not wish it was otherwise, but function in it. There was a study that came out from Pew, their religious landscape survey. I used to quote it years ago, and then I stopped because it got old. But a new one came out 3 weeks ago. So this numbers nerd got very excited when it came out 3 weeks ago. The good news is the losses to Christianity are leveling out. In general, the dip in Christians has leveled out mostly. But in case you can't see it, Protestants, for every one person, that's the blue, for every one person who comes to their churches, nearly 2 people leave, 1.8. For Catholics, for every one person who joins through RCIA, 8.4 people are leaving. 8.4. This number, they did this same study 9 years ago, the number was 6.8. 6.8 was grim. And in a matter of 9 years, for every one person who comes, 6.4 people who leave. Don't worry, it's not all bad. A study of young people found Gen Z, our current older teenagers and young adults, to be an incredibly open generation. In fact, 71% of them said that they were open to willing to learn about Jesus, even if it took their entire lives. 71%. So where's the gap between losing 8.4 people to every one And yet 71% of young people are interested, open to learning about Jesus. And I would say this, the gap is complicated. So I'm not going to have all the answers, but I think two parts of the puzzle are a gap in belonging and a gap in trust. A gap in belonging and a gap in trust. We have never had better curriculum for our young people. We've never had better content. But content alone does not make a disciple. Content is incredibly important. I do not want to downplay that. It matters. The truth matters. But the content alone doesn't make a disciple. There was another study done of young people back in 2020 that they asked the young people to self-select whether they were religiously affiliated or not. So it wasn't somebody checking the box for them. They self-selected themselves as religiously affiliated. 52% of those who said that they were religiously affiliated said they had little to no trust in religious institutions. So the kid in the pews says he has little to no trust in organized religion. We're not going to dig into the why of that. But it's also interesting to note that we're not the only thing they don't trust. This is on a scale of 1 to 10, their trust in different institutions. The top one is nonprofits, the bottom is the presidency. We're right in the middle, right above the media. We just barely beat the media, guys. 4.9. As you can see here, what there is a loss of trust in institutions. Some of it has been told to them that they oughtn't trust institution, and some of it has been earned by the institutions. There's a gap of trust. But again, the good news is that young people are open. The same group of young people who said 52% said they had little to no trust in organized religion, said what they needed to trust an expert was not for somebody to stand in front of them and give them lots of numbers. They said they only trust if that person has demonstrated to them that they care. They are uninterested in anyone's expertise unless they know that person cares about them. The old adage is incredibly true. They do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Trust. Trust is incredibly powerful with this generation. That gap between 8.4 and 71% is you, is me. Not a talking head on YouTube, but flesh and blood adults in their lives. And the crazy thing is they're asking for it. They're asking for it by name. This isn't just one of those things that all of us, who are a lot wiser than they are saying like, what you need is caring adults in your life. The National Federation for Catholic Youth Ministry did a study of young people and asked them, what do you want from the church? Do you know what was top of the list? Doctrine change? Nope, didn't even make the top 10. We think that's what it is. You know, the top 3 things they asked for? A reimagining of faith formation, confirmation away from a classroom model. More intergenerational support, and more youth ministry programming. They are asking for intergenerational support by name. This isn't something we're telling them that they need, they want it. This number, again, nerd here. Sticky Faith out of Fuller Youth Institute did a study of young people. They called it Sticky Faith because they did a study of young people who maintained their faith practice after they left home, so into young adulthood. And what they were looking for was common features amongst those young people. And what they found was a statistical anomaly. They found 100%. You don't find 100% in studies. But what they found is of those young people who maintained their faith practice after they left home, 100% of them could name 5 or more adults who were invested in their faith. 5 or more. So what does that mean? In an ideal world, mom and dad are 1 and 2. That still leaves, in an ideal world, 3 more adults that our young people need in their lives. In a real world, it might be mom but not dad. It might be dad but not mom. It might be neither mom and dad, and they just wandered into youth group because the girl they like is going there too, which is my husband. I was not the girl. But I'm forever grateful for, her name was Kathy Joe, and he started going to youth group because he followed Kathy Joe and he really liked her. And he is now a faithful Catholic husband to me. Take that. But that's how he got pulled into his faith. Mom and dad were not really a big part of that picture for him. 5 adults needed for every 1 young person. What this means is it's all of us. It's not just hiring an awesome youth minister, which is great. Big fan of that, having been one for a very long time. Well, I don't know about the awesome part, actually. Being a functional youth minister. Or hiring 2. We need other people in the pews stepping up to be co-youth ministers alongside their parish, to come alongside their young people. Speaking of things that won't be answered by just hiring the perfect person. In the United States, and there is more ministry happening for young people in the United States than anywhere else in the world by far. In the United States, I'm almost done with the numbers, I promise, guys. There is 1 paid youth minister to every 1,700 Catholic teenagers. 1,700. And that includes people who, like at most of our parishes, are wearing multiple hats. They're doing youth ministry, and they're doing faith formation and confirmation. Or if you're like my friend Cindy, who works at a rural parish, she's also the bookkeeper and bulletin editor, and I kid you not, janitor at 2 parishes 30 miles apart. Cindy's on that list. 1 to 1,700. Your parish does not need a youth minister. They don't need 2, they need 5 or 10 or 50. We all need to be activated to come alongside our young people. If we think about it ourselves, if we just stop for a minute, and it's worth you guys chatting later, I bet all of us can come up with 5. 5 people who made an impact on our faith. How often do I hear a grandparent on that list? Family members, neighbors, family friends. Who are your 5 people? Because I don't know anybody who ends up in the seat that you are in, spending time on a Tuesday to be engaged in the need for vocations without those people in your life. But think about who are your 5. So we talk a lot about the needs of teenagers. The needs of teenagers. At YDisciple, we've identified 5 critical needs, fundamental needs that teenagers have. I personally believe that these are human needs. These aren't just teen needs, but the volume is turned up on these in a really, really particular way in adolescence. The first one is the need to be understood. You want to know why we know that is a need of teenagers? Because they yell it at us when they're mad. You don't understand, right? The need to be understood. The second is the need to belong. How many people in our lives do we know have abandoned the faith that they grew up with? Because they couldn't find belonging there, but they found it somewhere else. Belonging is so fundamentally needed in the human experience. The need to be transparent. Our young people are living in a highly curated environment. That they live in a world of social media where anything they say or do can be used against them in a far public way than we ever experienced. Extremely public. They live in a world of filters, and they need a place where they can be their authentic selves, even if that authentic self isn't pretty. Number 4, the need to engage in critical thinking. And what I would add to that is the need to engage in critical thinking about the intersection of faith and life. Teenagers are on this massive construction project journey in their brains and bodies. And one of the biggest changes is the move from concrete thinking to abstract thinking. I'll give you this example. I had a small group of girls that I stayed with from the time they were in 6th grade until they just graduated last year at my parish at St. John Newman in Egan. And when we first started in 6th grade, there was one day we finished the lesson I was required to do. We made a little extra time, so I was like, how about you go do this, girls? Anonymously on a piece of paper, write down your biggest question about God. And we'll put it in an envelope, and I'll keep it in my little tote bag that I bring with me every week. And when we have some extra time, we'll draw a question out and discuss it together. So they did that. 6 girls. 4 of them had the same question. 6th graders. What does God look like? Can you think of a more concrete question than that? What does God look like? I was like, oh wow, this is gonna be easy. Okay, kind of. Same group of girls, because I stayed with them all the way through high school. Same group of girls, 2 years later in 8th grade, and I did the exact same thing. Just put it down anonymous. When we have time, we'll get to your questions because your questions matter. Same group of girls, 2 years later. Why do bad things happen to good people? If God is good, why is there suffering in the world? How do we know Jesus existed? Does it matter? Huge construction project happening in their minds. And it's so incredibly important for them in that time to be able to wrestle with questions of faith and what it looks like in my everyday life. And what they need to do that best is that 5th thing that we talked about there, asking for name, the need for guidance. And in that guidance, we need an authentic witness. Not just who can give the perfect answer, but can show them what that life could possibly look like. As imperfect as it might be, can show them what that life looks like. Can walk with them in their questions and in their doubts, in their struggles and in their joys. They need guidance in all of that. And that's why, with YDisciple, that's our why. That is why we are so focused with YDisciple on building content and training to do small groups with teenagers. Because we don't have a mono youth culture. So a mono youth program is not going to meet those 5 needs of all the teenagers. They need guidance. And me, as the youth minister up front, as awesome as it was, could not meet the needs of 100 students. That's why we love small groups. Because what we're able to do is train an adult to focus on the needs of a few, to walk with a few, so that we can better meet the needs of young people in our church. Because that demographic collapse that I just showed you is real and isn't going to be solved by just great content. That's part of what we do with YDisciple is we create content for those small groups, whether it's Bible studies or discussions about saints or videos. We put a lot of effort into making high quality, heresy-free, cinematic videos, but it does not matter how good that stuff is if the flesh and blood adult with them isn't able to look them in the eye and show them what it looks like to be a disciple who can receive their questions and walk alongside them. That is why we are so focused on building this approach for our young people and to activate as many people as we can in the pews, people like yourself. People like my favorite person I just met recently. I was doing a training in Southern Florida, and I met my new favorite mentor. With the YDisciple, we call our small group leaders mentors, not volunteers. Because a wise youth minister once pointed out to me, it's a church job. Everyone knows it's a volunteer gig, right? Like it's a little redundant. And also, volunteer kind of has a little bit of baggage to it, right? Here's your textbook, here's a classroom with metal folding chairs, go and make disciples. With this, we are asking you to mentor young people in the Christian life. It's a very different ask. I met a mentor in Southern Florida. She's 83. And she has a small group of 8 11th grade girls, and they adore Miss Mary Jane. Miss Mary Jane was with them through some really tough stuff. Miss Mary Jane was with them when she found out a few of them weren't even going to Mass. So she said, I go to the 9:15. I always sit by the organ. You want to come and sit with me? And started inviting these young people and their families back to Mass. If I'd been that youth minister in that parish, I probably wouldn't have known all the details that she knew. She was focused on them and on bringing Jesus to them. I want to end with a story and then open it up for any questions that you may have about young people, about what we're doing with YDisciple at NET. But end a story to illustrate with what we're talking about here. The kid in the pink, that's my son Cyril. Happy Feast Day, Cyril. And that's his friend Adrian. Okay? So we have a membership in the wintertime because it's Minnesota and I have 4 kids. What are we going to do? To a place kind of over by the Archdiocesan building on the east side called Vertical Endeavors. It's an indoor rock climbing place. I go against my will. Not what I would choose to do, but I got to keep my kids active, right? And they do something interesting at this place. It's the straps the ropes that they're hooked into are connected to a hydraulic system that uses their body weight to help them climb. And then when they let go of the wall, notice how I'm saying they, because I almost never do it. When they let go of the wall, it uses their body weight to slowly bring them back down. And so you don't have to be helping kids and pulling them up, they can just go. And they have certain walls that are designed for kids, so it requires a little less body weight to come down. I come down faster on those walls. My son Cyril, my oldest daughter is in 5th grade and just surpassed me in height. My son Cyril got my genes. Like he is just a little guy in his class, but he's got a big personality, so he'll be fine. When we went climbing last year, he would want to do the adult walls because he could do it, he liked it, but was not heavy enough to come down on his own. So we had this thing, they called it a monkey tail. It was a clip you could put on his back with a 30-foot rope so you could pull him down if he got stuck, which was very common for him. Now he's grown and he feels like big stuff because he'll come down on his own. Well, a few weeks ago, we brought his friend Adrian, and Adrian had never been climbing before. Did a couple of the kids' walls, and he's like, this is boring, I want to do the big walls. So this kid, first time ever doing this, goes over to the top of a 30-foot wall, all the way, super excited. Let's go at the top, and I hear, because I'm helping another one of my kids, I hear, Miss Annie! And I look up, and Adrian is dangling in the air with no way to get down. was like, oh, I should have gotten the monkey tail. But I'm also like corralling, like we had a birthday party there, it was foolish. I'm corralling all of these children. I was like, I'll be right there, bud. Cyril sees what's happening and he says, it's okay that you're afraid. I've been there before. I know what you need. You need my weight. Which is funny because he's like 30 pounds. So he goes over and he gets himself hooked into the harness, climbs up 30 feet, grabs Adrian's hand, and pulls him down. I think sometimes in the ministry, the temptation is for us to simply teach the right things, which are incredibly important. But me saying to Adrian, explaining the physics of what was going on was unhelpful to Adrian in that moment. We need our ministry to look a lot more like what Cyril did. I've been there before. It's okay that you're afraid. I will walk into the mess with you for you. Our young people need us, all of us, to walk in and to show them Jesus. I'll end with this quote from a book that was published in the 1970s. It's called The Lost Art of Disciple Making, and it's still incredibly true. He says this, Leroy Imes is the author, if any of you are note takers. He says, what makes fruitful, dedicated, mature disciples so rare? The biggest reason is that all too often we have relied on programs or materials or some other thing to do the job. The ministry is to be carried on by people, not programs. It is to be carried out by someone, not something. Disciples cannot be mass-produced. We cannot drop people into a program and see disciples emerge at the end of a production line. It takes time to make disciples. It takes individual personal attention. It takes hours of prayer for them. It takes patience and understanding to teach them how to feed and nourish their souls. And it takes being an example to them of all of the above. The ministry is to be carried on by people, not programs. Someone by not something. Perhaps God is calling some of us in this room to be those someones for our young people. I just want to open it up to any questions that you all have, and then I can go so you guys can get back to the rest of your meeting.
Do you have a base of operations?
So YDisciple is a product of Net Ministries. Net Ministries is based here in West St. Paul and has been in the Twin Cities for over 40 years. So what we get to do is we get to jump on the coattails of 40 years of training missionaries and be able to bring that to people out all around the world, which has been a great joy. So we're just based off of Robert Street here, down closer to Inver Grove Heights. Yeah.
This is really validating. We're about ready to kick off a program at St. John Newman on the 4th of April.
That's why you're familiar.
So yeah, I work with Luke Spihar. We
Yes.
life coaches. We do fatherhood coaching.
Love it.
And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take and adapt the model we have for one-on-one coaching into more of an environment where we have groups of guys.
Yep.
And we're trying to take and identify guys who've been through our system and then just put them into small groups and let them help coordinate that. So this is really validating for that.
Absolutely. Yes, I love that. What I love about that is it's multiplying, right? With all of this synod process here in this local archdiocese, we're hearing our archbishop say he wants to see every Catholic in a small group. And he's also saying something else really powerful. He has a vision for decentralization, right? That we are able to come alongside him, not in the same way, but to minister to smaller groups of people. And so we can multiply the good work that you're doing there. The same author, Leroy Imes, says in this book that ministry leaders should be addicted to the vision of multiplication. I love that. It's strong language. Addicted to the vision of multiplication. I love that you're doing that. That's so good. Any other questions?
Now, do you still send out the ministers for what they sign up for a couple of years?
Yep.
To different parishes in different states? Is that how you do it?
Yes. So we see Net's mission is what we call relational ministry, right? So ministering to young people through building of relationships. And we do that in 3 ways. So every year we train and launch about 100 missionaries to go around the country here and put on evangelistic retreats for young Catholics, preaching the gospel. Jesus loves you, praying with them. Those retreats last anywhere from 2 hours to 3 days, but usually are entry-level conversations. We also are training missionaries to go out and do discipleship teams where they're embedded in a parish or community or school for multiple years, building relationships, walking with individual young people. So a step deeper than what the retreat missionaries are doing. What the retreat missionaries are doing is important. It's all important. And then what we're able to do with YDisciple is train the adults in the pews through the training we use for our missionaries so that they can walk with the young people in their parish on a long-term basis. Because our missionaries are young and energetic and crazy, and their zeal is a beautiful witness, but they're gonna leave, and you're gonna stay. So how do we enable more people to be missionaries in their own community? So yeah, we've been sending out missionaries all around around the country here for 44 years now.
Now, different places request it, or how do you choose where they're going?
That's harder than we would like it to be because we have a supply and demand issue. We have a massive demand. We have so many more places that want net retreats than we have time for, or we have missionaries for. So pray, since you're in the business of praying for vocations, pray for net missionaries, because a lot of net missionaries end up finding their vocation there. So hey, see how this all works out? We don't have enough missionaries to go all the places that are asking for us. So it's a very intentional, calculated way of designing the routes that the missionaries can go on to hit as many places as we possibly can. Yep. Yeah.
I just have to give you my little testimony about it. So at St. Joseph's, we have YDisciple. Well, we have Net Ministries, but we also have YDisciple groups. You're just giving this big overview. There's so much in the programs and support for people that are in the trenches with these young people. I don't know how many, could you show them a little clip of one of the videos that we can show? So these small groups, they can see a little video clip and then discuss what they see or hear and talk about their faith and talk about where they need help or what's going on in their lives. And unbelievable program. Honestly.
Thank you.
I mean, even down to, there's something that can be emailed. So we would email the parents and say, this is what we talked about tonight in small group, and here's a little thing, so talk about it at your kitchen table or at dinner table or whatever. And I mean, things to send parents, things to give the young people as they're going through each one of the sessions. I mean, there's hundreds of videos. So with my senior high girls, I just took a whole list of them and said, okay, what interests you the most? So it's not like everybody's going through the same thing at the same time. You know, these younger girls might be learning about confirmation. The older girls, they want to know about dating. They want to know about how can I take my life into college, or my my faith into college, and all different topics. So that's the beauty of the program. There's hundreds of videos and discussion topics with the tools that go along with it. And that's what's so powerful about their program.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. and I did like the fist pump because I'm so excited to hear when people use it exactly as she's saying. Because all the things I was talking about monoculture versus subcultures is if I as a youth minister am going to make a calendar for the year for just one large group, I'm making the decision on what they need, on what their questions are. When you can give a group of young people a trusted tool, we're not giving them all of the internet, please, a trusted tool that has been vetted, and say, hey, what do you want to talk about? What's interesting to you? What we're doing is we're giving them an opportunity not just to customize, but to take ownership. We want young people to take ownership of their faith, don't we? How much more? But often in our programs, we give them opportunities to take ownership of nothing. They're told what class they're going to be in, who their leader will be. They're told what content they're doing. But when she says St. Joe's, each group is doing something different, that's how it's designed to be. So our content is designed not to be linear, but modular, so that it can be customized for the different needs of the teenagers. She was asking me to show you just how it works. So this is our platform. YDisciple is a digital toolbox. It is not a discipleship program because I can't make up a discipleship program in my windowless office. You do discipleship, right? So it involves content for those young people in their small groups, but it also involves training for adults. We have tons of training for adults, which I think is the most important thing. But she was saying, what does the content look like? This is, what's a fun one to start with? This is our most recent series. Have you guys done this one yet? This is our most recent series on Christian anthropology. What does it mean that God is my Father and I am created by Him? What does that mean in my life? So our videos are designed, you'll see this one here is 17 minutes long. No teenager is going to watch 17 minutes of video and have anything meaningful to say at the end of it. It's actually divided into short segments. So it gives you some content, and then it says on the screen, pause for discussion, and a bunch of questions to ask. And then when they're done talking, another segment, and then pause and discuss, so that it keeps the conversation moving back and forth. And we often tell people, we have written in our leader guides, if conversation's going really well, don't go on to the next video. Because the point of these is to spark that discussion, not for the videos to be the be-all, end-all in themselves. So I'll just show you the first few minutes of our most recent series called Created and Claimed. So the nice thing is you can come in here, the video's right here, and then everything you need to run the small group is right here. Parent sheet that she was talking about, available in English and Spanish, leader guides, but we like to have it so you don't have to click multiple places. So here it is.
All the different tools that you might need.
Yes.
It's just.
Who is Naomi? Well, she's really intense.
But in a good way.
Who is Naomi?
Well, she's the type of person that steals a Uber Eats order because she thought it was free food on the curb.
Here is Naomi.
Who is Naomi? She's never shy to tell you what she really thinks. She's a wild card. She's the kind of person who flirts with the bouncers who gets us free into the clubs.
Who is Naomi? It's Naomi? I've been saying Naomi for like the last 10 years. Who is Naomi? That's a good question, isn't it? Let's go.
In high school, everyone thought I was fun and confident. A half Japanese, half Venezuelan girl from Miami. And then I found Jesus and moved to the Midwest. In this new environment and trying to follow Christ, my confidence dropped. And I feel like Naomi is just too much for people. I'm a girl that like wears her heart on her sleeve, and I'm very emotional, and I'm going to go 100%, and I literally feel like it scares people. So I dial myself back, I cover up how big my emotions are. My heart says, go hard, be extreme, but my mind is saying, you're being too much. I feel like it's a constant battle between my head or my heart. I question whether I've lost a part of me in trying to follow my faith. It's so hard to be Catholic, and I just I don't know why I picked this. It's so hard. Basically, if I want to be good, does that mean I have to be less Naomi? Try some thinking.
Alright, so I'll pause it there.
Paints those balls.
Just gives you a taste of what we do. We always try to feature actual young people. One thing we learned is we were talking about expertise, and they need to know that the expert cares about them. So rather than our videos featuring the experts, it features a young person who actually has questions. A young person who doesn't actually have it all figured out. And then the story is them talking to experts. So we're still getting the good solid content in there. They're talking to priests. They're talking to their own mentors. They're talking to therapists. Different types of people to get that content in. And what that does for young people watching it is instead of them being on the defensive and like, do I buy this? They find themselves moving alongside in their minds the hero who is the learner. And it opens them up pretty significantly. So, yeah. Any other questions before I?
Thanks for doing that.
What was it? Yeah, no, thank you.
Kind of gives it a little flair of what.
I'll give you your royalties after this.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, thank you
Excellent.
very
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you.